Hello, folks. Welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. I appreciate you tuning in. I hope you are doing well. I hope you are soaking in the last few bits of summer that you have. If you are listening to this on the day it comes out, I am in New Orleans, Louisiana. What have I gotten up to? I don't know. Was it exciting? Most likely. First time I will have been in New Orleans, so I have. I'm very excited to experience it because I've heard nothing but rave reviews and love for the great city of New Orleans. So I'm looking forward to telling you about that once I return. Also, we'll be going to Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland in the next few weeks here. I'm especially excited about Belfast as my kind of lifelong obsession with the RMS Titanic will now come to full fruition, as we'll finally visit the city where it is built, and we'll be staying where the ship was designed. So I am looking forward to just really soaking in the entire experience and the history of the city and everything that is Titanic related, as well as everything that the great city of Belfast has to offer. And to discuss our show today, I am beyond excited to be able to share with you a dream interview for myself and for this podcast. My guest on the show today is Brian Fallon. Brian Fallon is the lead singer and guitarist for the band the Gaslight Anthem. You might also know him from his solo work, as well as his work with Horrible Crows. And the Gaslight Anthem are back and are getting ready to release their first studio album since Get Hurt in 2014. It's called History Books. It's coming out on October 27th. The 3 singles, including the one that just came out on the day I am recording this, Little Fires, just premiered today, September 5th. So get that wherever you get your music. But a very good friend of mine who also is a great podcaster as well, Selena Kopic from the podcast 2 Week Minimum, had Brian as a guest and was nice enough to connect us. And so I got to sit down with someone whose band I've seen perform in many different iterations over the years, and someone whose whose concert, specifically the show with Against Me and Jimmy Eat World at PNC Bank Arts Center, plays in very heavily into my relationship with my now wife. That was the first concert we ever attended together, so I of course had to make sure to let Brian know that. And this, it's always great when like your heroes really like live up to what you want them to be. So there's a ton of great stories in this podcast, and then a lot of love for the New Jersey punk rock basement show scene. Something that if you're a regular listener to this podcast, you know that I have a fond admiration for the New Jersey basement scene that spawned so many incredible bands, particularly out of my experiences of the like early 2000s, like emo, my chem, Thursday, post-punk, hardcore scene. But Brian's going to tells me a lot about what it was like when he started going to shows, and then when he started doing shows, even before the Gaslight Anthem became a thing. So I'm incredibly. This was a dream come true for me to be able to have this podcast, and it's a joy for me to be able to share it with you. And if you enjoyed this and think you would want to listen to more of this, you can go to awesomedisaster.com and listen to the podcast everywhere you get podcasts, as well as everything related to me at awesomedisaster.com. And now let's dive in to my conversation with Brian Fallon of the Gaslight Anthem. To our our mutual friend Selena. I was listening to your appearance on her podcast, and I was 2 episodes before you on that podcast as a guest.
Oh yeah, she's great, greatest podcast in the world.
Yeah,
I
I
like
love.
Candace.
No, dude. So do I. And I love her just as like a funny person, but I felt like, especially, I felt like there was a lot that we could relate to, as someone who I also spent a lot of time in malls and specifically antique stores, and like just the scent of like a very specific era of Yankee Candle will just totally flashback my entire life to me.
Yeah, we have we have this other one that we found in like some dump in New Hope, PA. And we were looking at these candles, but they smelled really good. I think they're 50, 60 cents they cost to get, and they're giant jars. And we bought more than you should, and then I brought them home because I thought I could never get them again. And then my wife goes to this place across the street from our house, and sure enough, there's rows and rows, infinite rows of this candle, and it was some wax splendid thing with a cool logo, but it smelled great. It's not a 2 wick minimum; it's a 1 wick candle. But I'll tell you, it sprays scent everywhere, every which where,
Uh-huh. Are
whole house.
rad. Like I have a couple like Yankees I just burned like right in the middle of my living room in my 2 bedroom here in Queens. That'll just like really.
Queens,
Yeah, that's where my wife and I live.
home
Astoria.
of the Ramones.
Yes.
Oh, Astoria, nice, very nice.
Yeah, so not too far from Forest Hills where they got started.
Yeah.
And like I could probably start this by telling you a bunch of interesting stories of the various times I've seen you with either Gaslight or solo. But the one in particular that I want to mention is this is my phone background right here. This is then girlfriend, now wife, on my phone background here, and
Yeah.
this is from the PNC show with Against Me and Jimmy Eat World. That was the first
Oh,
concert.
okay.
That was the first concert we ever
Nice.
went to together.
Oh, that's good. There you go. That's a good one to go to.
Dude, I that was like one of my favorite shows I've seen. It was just like seeing like your band at that time in New Jersey, which is like one of my favorite places to see shows, and I say that as someone who lives in New York. Some of the crazy shows I've been to have been in New Jersey, and whenever like I think about like creative stuff and where I'm going, I always go back to your why not speech from that show.
Uh, that's a true story. That's a thing. I think that's kind of like something my friend said. Ian, actually, who's in the band, and
Mhm.
he plays with the band, and he was saying, you go see a show, whatever, you see some bands, and you're like, wow, I wish I could do that. But then you go see our band, and for some reason, good or bad, you're like, I could do that. I kind of think it's both, because it's like it's a little bit like, wait a minute, what do you mean? That took a lot of years and practice and stuff, but really, no, you can do it. Any old idiot can do it. It's just you got to get the right. I think that you have to have the divine lightning that comes down and says like you'll make it and you won't, and I don't know what that is. I wish I knew, but
Well, yeah, man. There's just something about like the coming together of individuals and circumstances that just can create like these sort of like magical moments. And I remember when because I think you finished that show by covering the Who, and I everyone around me w- was just like fists in the air. Everyone was just having
yeah.
like the the best time. I remember that so vividly. Was there like when if you ever think about like concerts of like your youth and your formative years, is there a show for you that you remember that was specifically like a lightning rod of inspiration for you?
I mean, a lot of like the punk shows I went to see were like that, but the funny thing is they were all like in really small places, venues of basements. Like some of the best shows I've ever seen were in basements. Which, this is a bizarre thing. I don't think I heard the vocals very well, but it didn't matter. The energy was palpable, and I saw bands I really really care about like 2 feet away, and then at the same time there's like the big shows, but the big shows, I don't know. There's a powerfulness there, and like if you do it right, you can really make a big show feel like a small show. But there's something about those early basement shows, people heaving on you like just all
Hmm.
over. It's just there's nothing like that. I don't. I'm not really sure why. It's the closest I ever felt to like being part of, the world as a place and a human. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, those are probably the real. I mean, speaking of, it would be there was a show with Hot Water Music and Leatherface. I can remember in 1999. That was probably
Yeah.
huge.
Oh, cool. And that was like in somebody's basement in New Jersey?
Yeah, in New Brunswick, and it was supposed to be in a venue, but the venue caught fire that day. So
Well,
the wall in the venue was the Melody Bar in New Brunswick, and it caught fire. So they said, well, shows. We were like, I was waiting out there since 11 o'clock in the morning, and then it was like, well, I guess the show's canceled, and then it wasn't, and we just moved it down to a house, walked down the street.
I I love that. That says everything about the indomitable spirit of punk rock and DIY.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
nothing stops the show from happening.
No, I mean it was the kids were already there. This was like, I guess when that happened, it was probably right before Doors. So like if Doors were at 3 or 4 or whatever, it was like, okay, we're moving the show, and then everybody was like, is it canceled? Is it canceled? And then the people were like, no, and then we all this massive exodus of punk rock kids were walking down the street of New Brunswick, and we just walked to this house, and show was in the basement, and all the bands were hanging out outside. It's
Amazing.
wild. Yeah.
That's 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 cool as that's cool as shit. Like I've heard like the tale of like the New Jersey basement scene like looms very big in my imagination because like mostly for me like when I was coming of age it was like that like early 2000s kind of emo explosion with like my chem and Thursday and that era, but it goes back to like the late 90s as well with like hardcore and post hardcore.
Yeah, of course. But even maybe like, I guess in the 80s, not so much. It wasn't really like a house thing because like Black Flag would still play at CBGB's. They would play a couple art spaces, like if you had a venue that was like maybe an anarchist bookshop or something like that.
Hmm.
But I don't think you would see Black Flag there. I think that they were like still more of like booking agents or whatever, or that Hilly Crystal thing, which was not our world at all. Like we
Right.
went there on the very tail end. Like I think I saw maybe like 5 shows at CBGB's ever, and it wasn't awesome. It wasn't like television or anything. It was just like
Uh-huh.
one of my friends' dumb bands was playing, and I just went. Um, or one of my dumb bands was playing. So the basement thing was, I think, I'm not sure where that was started because the Bouncing Souls did it in the late '80s,
Hmm.
but maybe it was the DC kids that taught us that. Because you played there because it was illegal to play anywhere else, and you couldn't. So you had to have
Yeah.
the only way to have the show because like the venues were like, we're not booking you, you know,
Yeah, punk was like not punk the venues were like allergic to punk or anything like
big
fast
time.
or
Yeah,
anti-establishment.
and especially because punk in the late '70s was basically, it was like heroin music. Really, I mean,
Yeah,
it
no,
was like,
totally.
yeah, the Dead Boys, Johnny Thunders, like all these bands, they were on drugs and they would be like dying in the venue. So I understand why in the early '80s they didn't want punk bands coming in, but I think some of the hardcore bands challenged that. Like I know the bands in New York, Nausea, and that they would have like these public outside shows. But I do think that something about whoever had the idea to just be like, we're gonna do this in our basement. That's cool. You'd be like, okay. And then it worked. And it became like a thing. Like I can't believe how much time I spent in a basement.
Dude, no, like I know what you mean. I grew up in like rural Southern Maryland, so about like where like about an hour south of Baltimore, like
Yeah.
in DC, and there was nothing to do. It was one of those places where there was like quite literally like we're gonna if we're not going bowling or to the movies, we're gonna hang out in front of the convenience store, that kind of place.
I'm with you. I'm with you. What are you doing in front of a gas and sip on a Saturday night? Our choice.
Exactly. We're just,
Yeah.
talking about our teachers from school or this fucking math test or whatever. Like play a play auditions, uh, drinking a Pepsi Blue and us or a
Yeah.
Sobe, like all of that shit. And
Yeah.
and like the kids who wanted to who had bands, like it was the big one that that used to happen was every Christmas there would be something called Slam the Christmas Tree, and it was usually at, if not a volunteer firehouse, it was at like the Armory, which I don't know why we
Oh,
have
okay.
an armory, but those weren't as fun because they took security way too seriously. So you'd like try to have fun, and
Yeah.
then they'd come like hit you.
It's funny though because like I think I remember the VFW hall days and the firehouse days, and
Uh huh.
that we had a lot of those too. Because and everybody like all the punks they talk a lot of trash about the cops, but I will say one thing about my one positive thing I have to say about the police is that I don't have anything else positive after this. Is that they always like sort of let the shows happen, and especially like the vets, like the veterans, like the old guys who like yeah their arms shot off in Korea or whatever. They'd be like, "You guys look." I mean, at that time they would tell us we looked like you know whatever they wanted to say, some word you definitely
So
can't say
like
now.
a slur. I got you. I know what you
Yeah,
mean
like
though.
some kind. I mean, all sorts of different ones, like colorful ones too. They made up a few of them,
Uh huh.
but because we were wearing ladies' clothes, men's clothes, all the clothes. We were wearing everything. Like I mean, people think it's a new thing. It's not. We were.
No.
I, I made a shirt out of fishnet pantyhose one time, and I cut the feet off to be the sleeves, and I just cut the crotch out of the middle, and it went right over my head, and then I was like instant the Crow, you know. Put a black T-shirt over it. You know what I mean? Because I was like a little, I wasn't feeling fit as a kid, so
Sure.
or now or whatever. So I would just cover myself up, but I had these cool fishnet arms. I was like Peter Murphy in my head.
Uh huh.
But so these guys would just let us do our shows, our stupid shows for $300. They would say, "You give us $300, you can book however many bands you want." On a Saturday, we charge $5 at the door, easy $300, and that was
Yeah.
it. We had all these bands play like in Legion halls. So good.
Dude, it's like amazing. Like, I feel I like this sort of understanding of these kids need like a thing or like a release on, or they're just gonna go cause havoc other places that
Well,
we'll
it
have to
kept
deal.
us out of trouble because the deal was with the Legion halls is no drinking, smoking outside, cigarettes,
Yeah.
no drugs, no drinking. If you drink or you brought booze, you're out. You're kicked out. And everybody knew it. It was like that's the deal. Nobody's breaking this rule because we're all under 21. We're probably all under 18. It was an all ages show,
Yeah.
and everybody was cool. I never once had to kick anybody out of a show that I put on. Benny could tell you a lot of stories because he really booked. Benny booked many shows, like big
Uh-huh.
bands, and more than I did. But yeah, it was cool how even the kids respected it. They were like, "This is all we got. If we mess this up, there ain't
Uh-huh.
no venue booking us. Ain't no CBGBs or Stone Pony booking us now."
Or no,
That's what
totally.
that's what I say now. I go, "What's up, Stone Pony? You wouldn't book me then. You want to book me now?"
Bring it
Uh,
full circle.
yeah. What are you gonna pay me? That's what I say. Now I want 10 pizzas, not five. I make them suffer for that.
I want two toppings. I know it
What's
costs
on?
extra.
You ready? I'll tell you a story about the Stone Pony. This is funny.
Okay.
So, right around that tour where we did the 59s, oh, after that, we did the 59 Sound reunion.
Hmm.
And so, whenever I play a local show at a venue that's like somewhat, I wouldn't say the Stone Pony outside is small, but
Hmm.
the backstage is kind of accessible, is what I'll call it. So a
Right.
lot of anybody who's in a band or anybody who like Tom and Jerry down the street who's like walking in, they can't get in. But like anybody in a band, anybody who's a promoter, anybody who works in the New Jersey music scene as a professional, they can get backstage. It's just the way it is. I hate it because our
Hmm.
backstage is very closed. So whenever we play a show like the Stone Pony shows that we did, like where we did 4 or 5 of them or whatever we did, and they were outside at the summer stage, I roll in and right before we go on, get out of my car, go on the stage, say hi to the guys, hey, and then and then as soon as the show's over, I walk out of the show and I'm out. So my wife is sitting there at one of these shows and so she pulls the truck up to the back gate
Uh-huh.
where I can go. I'm literally going off the stage, handing my guitar off to our guitar tech, and I'm walking and I'm going home. Like I don't. That's it for me. Like I did the show. I'm not trying to hang out. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. It depends on the mood.
Totally.
I'm not a big. I just sometimes I can't handle it.
I got
Especially
you.
after that kind of like so much electric show. You're like, I gotta go.
Yeah,
So
totally.
so there's this kid. kid. There's this kid from a burrito shop, and he's in his truck, and he is honking high hell at my wife. Crazy. He pulls up next to her, yelling call it dumb bitch, this stuff, screaming, I'm gonna kill you. What are you, an idiot? Get out of the way. Because he was trying to load out, I guess, for his food
Right.
truck
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And so I come off the stage, and my wife goes to the guy, like, I guess, right? I'm like walking off the stage, and my wife, like, leans out the window and goes to the guy, like, I swear to God, if you're here in 3 seconds, you will die. This is it for you. You're dead. Because she knew that if I got off stage and I heard this, I was going to go Hulk smash and smash my car on this kid, and that kid would have been dead.
Right.
And they, like, so somehow somebody like ran over and like told this kid like, yo, dude, you hear the band playing? That's her husband. You better get out of here. And so he did. And then I heard about it like the whole way home. She waited like a half hour to tell me, so I was far enough to not turn the car around.
Uh-huh.
But the next day, this was at the Stone Pony. I made the kid come back to the venue and apologize to my wife. And I was like, this is not happening. Like, but this is the kind of, you know, a local absurdity that happens that nobody ever finds out about. And I was like, you're gonna come back. Like if you're man enough to call a woman a bitch, you're gonna come back and you're gonna see her right to her face and you're gonna say you're sorry. Or I'm gonna come to your job and I'm gonna throw you across the counter. And like
Yeah.
he he came and he did it and I was like, don't you ever I'm like, you never know who you're talking to. Like, don't ever do that again. Cause I'm like, dude, what if it was like you ruin your career doing something like that? You'll never work at a place again. And the kid was just like, he got it, but I was so shocked at that kind of behavior. And like, but that's New Jersey. You never know.
No, no,
So it was an
totally. Like,
interesting.
yeah,
It's an interesting thing that happened that was there. Now that has nothing to do with the Stone Pony. This was just like some kid from a vendor. It was like nothing to do with the venue. But it's an odd,
right.
odd thing. Nobody knows that story. You
Oh
first.
man,
You heard it
that's
first.
well, I appreciate it, Ryan.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, sounds like you set that dude on hopefully a much better half. But 100%. I feel like that sort of like well, I also feel like if you're going to be in punk rock, you have to like learn to dish out a lot of shit because it seems like people have no sort of like realization of you sometimes as like a human and an individual, or certainly like w- or someone who like has like a family who's worthy of dignity and respect. Like Jesus Christ, what the fuck is his problem to even
I don't know. I mean, he was really young
regardless
though.
of him?
No, you know what? I take that back. He wasn't really young. He was like 20, and so I was like, he was old enough for me to have hit. So it was like, it was
Sure,
really
sure,
like a thing.
gotcha.
But I made I made the decision. I'm like, I'm not gonna beat this kid up because it's not gonna teach him anything at all. And I'm like, I want this kid to understand that this is not how it works, and especially in like this is my hometown. This is where I feel safe. This is where my friends feel safe. Like you shouldn't. You can't be saying that to people. Like get out of here. So
One
I
100%.
give him credit for showing up, though. He showed up the next day, and I gave him credit for that. He was extremely extreme. Like the kid was pale. He was very scared, but he showed up anyway. So I feel like he redeemed himself a little bit.
Right. Well, I'm glad to hear that that happened. Let me ask you this. So growing up in New Jersey in like the 80s, did you ever get to Action Park as a kid?
I actually stayed away from Action Park
Oh,
because I knew all the stories. I mean, like I was probably playing guitar by then, and my friends got into like dirt bikes and Action Park in that area, and like I was a little bit weary of that stuff because I didn't want to break my hands. And so no, I didn't go to Action Park.
yeah, I've seen like the documentary and I've seen like the comedian Chris Gethard like tell tales of that place. But by the time I was coming around, it was like Six Flags, a little
I
bit
we
more
would go to
safer.
yeah, Fright Fest was when we were 18 and 19. It was Fright Fest.
Right on. And so when you started playing guitar and uh what were like your first like live performances? Were those at those basement shows when you
Oh yeah,
first started?
yeah.
And were you playing
Oh no,
by
no,
yourself?
no. There was actually no. I'm sorry. It was a cafe. It was like a. Do you remember when there was like cafes and they had open mic night?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was me. That was the '90s. That was oh, it was Friends. It was basically Friends, and it was Phoebe, and I was Phoebe, and I was singing Smelly Cat. Only like I would go to these like this one cafe in particular. We would go to all of them, but and I would do like punk songs on my acoustic guitar. Like I would learn how to play like some Cure song or some Bauhaus song, and like I would play it on the acoustic, and that's it. Like and I can still remember this one girl who used to come and sing like Depeche Mode songs. Like
Oh
it was
man.
awesome.
That's
It was
that
really
sounds
cool.
pretty that sounds rad.
It
So
it was rad.
yeah, and so was that like teaching you about like were you like learning about okay, this is how I engage an audience at like the most cuz I don't know what open mics music mics back then were, but I definitely know that doing comedy at open mics in New York like I had to like really fight to get any sort of attention from
Yeah,
any cuz it's all other performers. So I'm curious if you had a similar experience in that era.
absolutely. The only people who understand my early plight is comedians because it's like being punk and also being not invited, meaning like it's not your show, it's just an open mic. That taught me more about playing in front of like 10,000 people than anything else in my life. And I think that those early years were it made me have the invaluable gift of if I loved it, I was going to do it even if you hated it. And like I could withstand that without quitting.
Yeah, absolutely, because there's something just bringing you back. Yeah, just kind of knowing that there's something on the other side of this. There's like a light or a goal that's gonna carry
Yeah.
me through. Like the only, the really the for anyone to become and sustain any kind of life as a performer for other people, like love of it is what carries you through because
Oh
it will
yeah.
do everything it can to choke that out of you. And sometimes like you were bringing up Black Flag, and I'm sure you've read Get in the Van and
Mhm.
just all those stories that Rollins tells about like getting cigarettes put out on his leg or getting like assault like basically like thought people wanting to fight him after shows. I was like,
Yeah, all the time.
yeah. And now imagine if you were just like wanted to be an accountant, like, and you had to fight people.
Maybe that would weed out a couple of accountants.
Oh my god, exactly. Like if you just had to do like real Fight Club before your
Yeah,
like your first day at Merrill Lynch, it could
yeah,
really change the culture.
dude. It'd be way worse, I think.
Yeah, because it would be only the most insane of the insane people.
Right. It'd be the Wolf of Wall Street all over again.
Yeah, with like literal wolves.
Yeah. Just well, hey, you want a job here? Well, here, welcome to the wolf room, and they just like let a bunch of wolves out, and if you survive, you got a job. You know what I mean? Like that's it.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
like, I swear someone's gonna hear this and try it. That idea is probably now already in production for after the strike ends.
I'm sure it is. I mean, but I have not a lot of love for you, like any of that. It's just, it's not. They've never. I don't know. Like there's like a lot of people that are very. I mean, like being an artist is not a good career move at all. Like for anyone, I cannot recommend. But like it's so bad. And then like they're like, oh, like the union, blah blah blah. And they're like, well, I'm like the union who's the one who calls every 18 months and tells me I didn't make enough for insurance, so I don't have health insurance anymore. I'm like, I don't really care what happens to the union. But it's like it pretty much is like getting thrown in a wolf pit.
Yeah, and then folks like yourself and like so many other bands, like the collective product of all of that time, you see like you come out of like you're in the wolf pits, and then like you come out with a 59 sound, or you come out with like after the Hello Exile, or after the party, or
Yeah,
listing other records I like. But
sure.
because I imagine we have some crossover. So something else. So you're playing cafe shows, and I'm because I know you started like doing music like in your late teenagers. How soon after this, like, because I've realized I don't really know when the Gaslight Anthem like officially started. Like I know
Mm.
you, like I know you start here, and then how do we get to the Gaslight Anthem?
Well, I mean that was probably 2012 to 14.
Mm,
Um, or no, no, no. I'm sorry. That was probably 1992 to 1994. Was like the open mics, and maybe to 1998 it went on until. And the Gaslight Anthem wasn't until 2006. So it was a long time. Like I was like Moses in the wilderness for a long time. It was basically just me walking around, nothing happening, nothing. Like I was delivering tires to truck stores. It sucked.
oh man.
But every night I would go home and I'd go up in my room and listen to some music, and I would listen to Howard music or Vale and Bruce Springsteen, whatever, Bob Dylan, and then I would kind of formulate like I think I could do this. I think I can do this, and I would just constantly search for shows, flyers, wherever the shows were, and I would go just listen to the music and be part of it. I just wanted to be in it.
Yeah. Yeah, because again, something just kind of like you needed to be there. I'm
I did, yeah,
imagining.
yeah.
One
It was like a thing, It was. I knew we weren't like we couldn't just get out of the gate and be like ACDC playing in some big, you know, arena. Like the when I saw the local scene of the basements and that kind of thing, I was like, this is doable. Like we could do this.
mhm. You were giving
So,
yourself your own why not speech in those basements. And then
well, the
okay,
bands I feel like the bands were teaching me that. The other bands, they were kind of like, you could do this. Like, I don't know.
right.
Have you heard my songs? They weren't all 59 sound. There's a couple 69 sounds, maybe like a 39 and a half sound. It was pretty bad.
41 sound.
Yeah, it's like
Oh,
before
yeah,
that
no.
was a 6.5 sound. It was really terrible.
Oh, dude, my high school like rock band, like at the time I was like, this is the pinnacle of whatever I can make. And I look back and I was like, oh, how far I've come. How far I've come indeed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a trip when I hear stuff. I have the pleasure of people bringing up like music I made when I was in my teenage years sometimes to me, and I'm just like, dude, that's not meant to be out. Like the internet is a dirty bastard. Like it's not. this is not meant to be heard by anyone except for my like girlfriend at the time, who
Right.
hates me as much as I hate that music.
Oh no, I definitely have a couple songs on CD written specifically for girls that never did what I intended them to do. But I feel like I'm richer for the experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's a deep chocolate, a rich chocolate we are. Like a good Hershey mix.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
oh, and so when by the time so when you get to Gaslight, like something I've always picked up and I've in other interviews I've listened to you is like I've always and whenever folks ask me to describe your band to you, I generally say like, well, imagine if like Bruce Springsteen was in the Replacements. And I know that like I've
Yeah,
heard you talk at length about um
it's pretty accurate.
Paul Westerberg the the Replacements. Like and what do you think? What was it about them that like really like drew you to their music? Because they were always to me like a excellent like four chord kind of like Heartland rock band, but they were still punk.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that they just sounded like everything I liked, and they sort of connected the bridge between like the punk that I was listening to, the Clash or Black Flag or Misfits or whatever, and then they connected all those bands to Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen, and I could see where those and even the '70s, like like the '70s rockers, like I could hear certain things in like Black Diamond and that kind of thing, and I was like, oh, okay, like especially the Let It Be album, where I could go, well, that kind of sounds like T-Rex a little bit, and like some of this stuff, like just I don't know, it just sort of connected, and even like, and this was I grew up in the late '80s, so it was like Skid Row or whatever, and I could hear some of that in the Replacements. I was like, I hear like 18 in Life and all that stuff. I could hear some of that stuff, and it really kind of bridged the gap between everything I was listening to at once. And I think Paul's words, because they would write songs like Tommy's got his tonsils out and whatever, and that I didn't relate to at all. But I knew when I heard Answering Machine and Androgynous and like Left of the Dial, and I knew that there was something more behind there.
Yeah, Left of the Dial specifically. I don't think I really knew what that song was about until I heard you talk about it. There's like a certain sort of like loneliness for your friends
Yeah,
because man when you it's, again talking about like the stuff that no one thinks about being an artist is like you have this community kind of when you start and then it goes away because
it
everyone
sure
kind of
does. Yeah.
and then you're just kind of like looking around like what the hell happened and you're just
Well,
like yeah
yeah.
just
It,
turn
I
on that
think
radio dial.
Yeah, I think that song is like a hidden love song like that Paul wrote. There was an article on that very recently that like Left of the Dial was a good like secret love song because it's not apparently a love song but it is. And it was about a girl who was in a band who was also on tour that Paul was, you know, missing or something. And
Yeah.
I don't know the details, but that's kind of what it was about,
Wow.
which I thought was
Well,
cool.
yeah, it's really cool. Speaking of songs, I've really wanted to. There's a couple things about a few of your songs I would really love to ask you, just as a dedicated purveyor of your catalog.
Okay.
I would always. Speaking of like the stories behind songs, one of my favorite songs from the 59 sound has always been the Patient Ferris Wheel, and I love the chorus of that song. And I'm always been curious, like, is that autobiographical? Like, did you ever have that like moment, like standing in the rain?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, like I think I wrote that line because I literally was standing in the rain like right before I wrote it. Um, but it's like kind of about like how the shore, it was like much about like life as it was about the shore and like using the shore for a metaphor where it comes to life in the summer and in the winter it's entirely desolate. So like,
Yeah.
but like thinking of the patient Ferris wheel, like where does it go? And it's just sitting, waiting for the next summer, and then it gets to come to life and show all its lights, and give kids dreams of whatever cotton candy and like the boardwalk and the smells and the music, and but then in the wintertime it has to go away. And I think I felt like that working. Like I would just be like, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing, and I would play music at night, and then it would be the thing. So I kind of related it to I don't know where I got that from. I think that might have just been one that I made up, which was cool.
Uh-huh. Just like one of those like turns of phrases. Like you get to put on all your pretty lights and do the show, and then the next day you're back at the job.
Yeah.
So many. I can relate to that feeling. So and so many of
Yeah.
my
I
peers.
think everybody.
Yeah, that's just like yeah, that is so much of the life until and that can for some folks that is the life of an artist. Like especially if you're doing like underground or outsider kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's I don't know. It was our lives for a long time.
Hmm.
Like go to work during the day and then go be in the band at night.
Totally. But by that point, so like when 59 sounds out, that's album comes out on side one dummy. Was it this was it after that album came out, was this sort of like was like the change immediate as far as like everyone loving that album, or was it more gradual and then you guys like started seeing the change when you're on tour?
It was very gradual. I mean, it like happened, and you could tell that it was like something was happening, but it wasn't overnight. It was like kind of like little things would happen, and then like something else would happen, and then we get on TV, and then and then by the end of it, we were kind of like, oh, like this is good. Like, but the result is always in the live show, because if a lot of people show up, it's working. They don't, it's not working.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so on and during that tour, did you see like the crowds change or the kind of venues kind of start to change?
I don't know if it was like maybe towards the end of that tour, yeah, but like it probably didn't get like really different until American Slang. That's where it was kind of like, oh, all right, these are definitely bigger venues. But 59 Sound, there was still there was still some rat holes that we played.
Gotcha.
So
Oh well.
bad.
Oh, I would love to hear some about. Well, let me ask you this: did you guys have you ever played like us? I guess to not to put my music term hat on, like a secondary market or a smaller market that ended up like surprising you for good or bad?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, like some of our best shows that we had played were we would go to like Birmingham, Alabama, and there was like a place called Cave Nine that we played. And those shows were awesome. And I don't know, like there was a lot of places that we had played where it wasn't necessarily like on the beaten path. Richmond, Virginia was great to us.
Hmm.
Um, and there was a lot of places where it would be like, wow, this place is cool. Ohio was always cool, and it kind of like inspires you to, I never looked at it like major market or not major market. Like New York City was just as good as Columbus, Ohio to me. Like I didn't care. Like I just wanted kids to be excited, and matter of fact, I might have even hated the big cities more because it just always felt like a little bit more put on, in the big cities. Like you would feel like there's more expectation, there's more industry people. The kids have seen many more shows. Whereas
Yeah.
like you go to you know like Missoula, and they're like, we haven't seen a show all year. Cool. And they're pumped. So I think
Yeah.
that's kind of a cool thing.
No, I think that's the coolest thing, and I love that you have those stories because as one of those kids who like shows never came through my small town, like it was a big deal when like Hootie and the Blowfish played a show at like the field behind the firehouse where I'm
Yeah.
from. So like when you're starved for some or overlooked, like when somebody comes through and it can really like probably change some lives.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and it's fun for the band too because they get to see kids who are excited, which is good.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, that's
kids in
always
New
great.
York or London or LA, they're just like, oh, we see this all the time.
Oh yeah, like I don't know how many times like early on Gaslight played Brooklyn, but I feel like every time I play Brooklyn, unless it's I'm opening for like friends whose fans are really cool, I always feel like the majority of the crowds at like the cool shows in Brooklyn, arms crossed, whole thing, could not bother. It's almost like they're being challenged not to be excited by the performance.
Yeah, I mean, they're afraid of being excited about anything. God forbid they should feel something.
Dude,
you
dude,
know,
totally.
like
And
it's so thought about. Like it's all like considered and it's joke.
no, I know. That's why I've always loved New Jersey because like Starland Ballroom, some of the craziest crowds I've ever been to have
Hmm.
been there specifically. I remember seeing well, I've seen Newfound Glory a lot, a number of times. I would probably
Yeah,
say and the craziest crowd that's ever happened it was at the Starland Ballroom. Like that show was just nuts. People went insane.
yeah. I mean, that's a great venue. I love that venue.
Yeah.
It's been a good venue to me over the years.
Oh yeah, like they when they followed me on Twitter, that was a great day for me. I was very excited. Um, and then you've also, I know I know I've heard you tell this story on stage before, but you had a very memorable time touring in Japan.
Mm.
Uh,
Well, memorable if you mean like a disaster, like a nuclear disaster. That doesn't
right,
usually happen that often. So yeah, I mean, it was like we were there for the Fukushima thing, and it was like I wouldn't want to do that again.
right. So you were in Tokyo when the tsunami hit, and
Mm. We were on the train from Osaka to Tokyo.
oh, okay, and then like the and basically the entire country shuts down while you're on in a tunnel.
Yeah, yeah, and then the train just stopped, and it was like not. It was not exciting. That's not one of my tour stories I like.
Right. Have you gotten to play Japan under better circumstances?
Not since then.
Oh man, I'm so sorry to hear that. I feel like there's got to be at some way to make a triumphant return to Japan.
Yeah, I mean, I love Japan. Don't get me wrong, but like being in Japan was awesome. But like as far as that kind of thing, I'm not sure about that. Like that
Right.
was pretty intense, I think, for everybody. And like you know, but we it was, but like going there itself, like we had a really good time. I mean, and like I would definitely go to Japan again for sure. Um, but that stuff only happens once in a while. Oh, clearly someone's walking across my grass because my dog has decided that it's time to kill something.
Well,
Uh,
that what kind of dog do you have?
oh, he's a German Shepherd. He's huge. For centuries, since the dinosaurs, he's bred to guard, and that's what he does so well. And we're just like, maybe calm down this time. No.
Right.
But so the thing about like the one thing I will say about the Japanese people during something like that is I've never been out of the country for a disaster before. Um, and what happened was like the is it stoicism? I'm not sure. Stoicness,
Hmm.
whatever. Like they were still. This is my candle without being a candle. It's like I got these incense sticks.
Oh,
And then,
cool.
speaking of which, I'm not sure if is that Japanese or is that Chinese writing? I'm not sure.
That
Could be
could
something else.
it could be Japanese. I'm not 100% sure.
Nope, it's Japanese. It says it right on the side of the box. Japanese.
Excellent.
Okay, and that's in Karasuma. Oh, Kyoto.
Oh,
I think
yes.
Phoebe Bridgers has a song about Kyoto. So I'm lighting this little incense. It's a tiny one. It goes in this little like. You don't need to know about this. It's a little.
No, this is very cool to me.
This is good. This is so. I have two ways of getting it. I got like this little stone thing that you stick it in the middle,
Hmm.
or I got this gold one that has tape on the bottom. and that's how it stands up, which is
Interesting.
bizarre. And then it just kind of like leaks all over my desk like a drunk friend. Um, and but yeah. So anyway, so we're in Japan, and like the people are just like they're just going with it. Like they're like the one thing that was kind of scary is we finally got to Tokyo after like 8 hours or something stupid um and we got there and we went into the 7-Eleven and like it was bare. The shelves were bare. I mean nothing was there. Not a band-aid to be had. Not a cup of noodle soup, not a potato chip, nothing to be
Wow.
had. And when I walked into a major city like that, it'd be like it'd be like going to New York and like nothing there.
Right.
You would I was floored, and I was like, oh no. And we were staying in a hotel with the Melvins. Uh, like it was kind of just like a small hotel, like but the Melvins were there, and I guess they were
Hmm.
on tour with Dinosaur Jr. And we had all been, we played Fuji Rock. We were watching Dinosaur Jr. I'm a giant Dinosaur Jr. fan.
Yeah.
And and they were like, "What are you guys gonna do?" And they're like, "Well, we can't get home for a week." And we were like, "Yeah, us either. We can't get any flights. Like, we're just gonna have to wait until the weekend." And I think this happened on a Monday or something or Wednesday, and we couldn't get home until like Saturday or Sunday. It was like a long time, 5 days. It was five or 6 days.
Hmm.
And I remember like, and every night there'd be aftershocks and all that stuff. And you just like it was not fun. And it was like scary. But we did it and we haven't been back since though. But I'm sure we'll get back there. But it was intense. Like I think the intensity is not worn off.
I can imagine. There's something about being trapped, you know? There's a
Yeah.
psychological kind of response that happens to like when you don't want to be somewhere and you can't leave.
Right. Like we were in the train and I definitely remember thinking to myself like, because we were just outside of a mountain. So we had, the train goes through a mountain.
Yeah.
And like it goes through many mountains and it's on a bridge. So it was like half of the train was out of the mountain on the bridge, but below the bridge is nothing for 12 miles. Like it was so high in the air. Like if I said it was as high as an airplane, I'm not exaggerating. It was
Yeah.
so high. Like if you look down out the window, it was the Empire State Building pales in comparison to how high we were, and then there was like a creek down there, and then like the other half of the train was complete darkness because it was in a mountain. So I was kind of in like the seats right before the edge of the mountain, and I'm like, dude, if this mountain falls down, like I'm getting crushed by a rock, and this is like that's a terrible thought, and you're just like, well, okay, and like I could have freaked out, but I didn't, and I don't know why. I was just getting over being sick. Like I had like some kind of cold or whatever, but I was like
Uh-huh.
pounding green tea, and I remember thinking like right before it happened, I remember thinking, oh, I'm starting to feel better. Like maybe this green tea's working, and then it was like, the whole train goes black, and I'm like, oh,
Shouldn't have
my
had that
God,
thought.
why? And I was just like, but it was one of those times where I felt like this is it, and I was like, fuck it, whatever. You know what I mean? Because like I'm here. At least it's not, and I'm not dying in like Kansas City or somewhere lame. Like I'm in Japan. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's pretty rock and roll, pretty
It's pretty
gnarly
cool.
way.
It's not bad. Yeah,
Pretty
I
gnarly
just
way to go out if you had
yeah.
to.
I saw Dinosaur Jr. Now I'm going out in Japan. Fine.
I mean, it's one of those kinds of stories where I guess at the funeral it's just be like, "Wh- what a badass. I'm gonna miss him."
Yeah, they'd be like, he got to touch one of those toilets with the electronic buttons. It was so clean and it shot all the water. You didn't even have to use toilet paper. It was brilliant. He really made it. He got
Ah,
out of that dump, New Jersey. I loved it. They
what an
don't even have those
inspiration.
in Brooklyn.
They
Yeah,
don't.
what an inspiration. I tell you, but it was like, we got back and what's funny though is like the next day we expected it to be like shut down. You remember how like like New York like shut down after the pandemic or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Dude, we went out the next morning and we were like, we didn't know, like, is the air toxic? What's happening? Then we went to Starbucks. Everybody was in a good mood. Everybody was happy. They were like, well, I don't know, if we die, we die. But they're like, we went out that night to like this bar that was like a punk rock bar that was like very Clash themed. Benny drank whiskey out of a bottle with a dead poisonous snake in it. Like it was a poisonous snake that was dead for a long time, and he
Uh-huh.
drank whiskey out of it. It's disgusting. But I didn't touch that. But we went to like the Starbucks and they were happy. They were excited. We saw a wedding. It was very cool, like a traditional like Japanese wedding, very formal, you know, Japanese, and it was cool.
Yeah.
And it was like, and they were getting married, and we're like, that shit just blew up. They didn't care. They were getting married, and it was like it was so. I never seen anything like that. Like the colors that they had, the
Yeah.
red, bright red. It seemed like I'd never seen red before. And it was like, and the woman was like, just. I mean, I don't even remember what she looked like. I just remember that her presence was like so beyond beautiful that it was like not of this earth, and it was really incredible, and that life still goes on. And that's sort of when I was like, ah, it's fine. This is fine. We're in a hotel with the Melvins. What could happen? You know?
Totally. Yeah. And the Melvinsville, that's a good group to be rolling with into dire situation for sure.
I feel like, yeah, this guy knows Kurt Cobain. Like, how bad could it be?
Exactly. His
They
guitar
were
is so
pretty
cool.
friendly too. They were pretty friendly, which was cool because some of those bands, they don't have to be friendly. They're famous.
Hmm. Yeah, it's always nice when your heroes are friendly. I'm having that moment right now in this conversation, Brian. So
Hey,
it's working out for me too.
yeah.
I I would love to. I also want to ask you. I'm because otherwise I'll keep you all night because I'm just really enjoying this. I would love to ask you as a songwriter, and like this is a skill of mine. I'm trying to improve. Um, coming off of your runs of solo albums, and then coming back into the new Gaslight album. How do you keep challenging yourself as a songwriter, and what keeps I'm guessing what keeps you excited to like keep writing new songs, and like what's pushing you like coming into this new Gaslight album?
Well, I think the love for the audience is the first thing, because you don't want to like I don't know, in a way it really inspires me that they like their excitement. Like I feel like I'm Santa Claus, and like these songs are the presents that are coming on Christmas. And when the album comes out, that's Christmas and they're going to be so excited. And so like it just like pumps me up to write better songs. But also because like, you want to write better songs and like some of the things that like I've heard, like I'm a big Pearl Jam guy, but I think that they wrote some of the songs later, I think, are as good as anything on 10. It's just they're different. Like when you have that young energy that explodes, that's only once in a lifetime. You can't really do that often. Like they did it 3 times in a row with like they had 10 versus Vitology. That was a big run. But then
Yeah,
later, like you can't release 10 again. And matter of fact, if you do release 10 and you're in your 40s, it's kind of lame. Like it's
yeah,
not cool. You got to kind of mature with. And like I watched Bruce, I watched Pearl Jam, and we didn't get to see the Clash go on, but we did get to see Joe Strummer go on into the Mescaleros, and I learned so much by doing that. And some of these bands that like you know they just like really kept going and like stayed quality. Like there's some bands that sucked after they hit their prime, and like I'm
hmm,
not gonna name them, but I mean there's bands we all know that they're just bad, and like they're some of my favorite bands in the world, but their later records are just terrible. They're terrible, and I think that like you can, like the Smiths, they died young, but they're forever young, which is great. And we
right.
didn't die young. We somehow managed to keep going. So what I had to do is I had to really look at like, you know, who are the other people who didn't die young and stayed cool? And it was Bruce, because even the Rising guy was like 50 when that came out, and then
Yeah.
I got encouraged. Like Emmylou Harris was 49 when Wrecking Ball came out, which I think is her best record. And then Lucinda Williams was 45, 46 when Car Wheels came out. And um and even like, a lot of these people that you thought were kind of like, oh, they were much younger then. They really weren't. And it was cool to see that artists were still making like great music later in life. Like no one expects Bruce Springsteen to write Born to Run again. No one expects that. And no one
Right.
expects Eddie Vedder to write Jeremy again. But he does write other songs that I think are as important as Jeremy. And
Mm-hmm.
like I think that's cool. Like I always wonder what would a Kurt Cobain have done in his 40s, in his 50s. Like it would have been so cool to see.
I know. I would have loved to have seen what he done. I imagine it would still I think he would still maintain a lot of what is him. It maybe not be as
Yeah,
like sludgy as Bleach or In Utero, but it would
sure.
have still been really, really good. And also to your point about Springsteen, that song he did for the movie The Wrestler is one of the like most heartbreaking songs he
I
has
think that's one of
ever
his best
written.
songs.
It's an incredible song, and
Yeah.
I think he just tossed that off for free
There you
for
go.
that movie. I'm like,
I mean,
holy
that's like,
shit.
yeah, it's crazy. But I think that a lot of those bands, like when I listen to like even like Dinosaur Jr. now, to me, it's like I can still hear the band who made, Where You Been and all those songs, like You're Living All Over Me and all that. I can still hear that band in the 50, 60-year-old band. I can still hear like even Social Distortion and those bands. Like I can still hear the young man in that. And I really think that that's what like, Chris Cornell or Kurt Cobain or any of those guys. And like the thing that sucks is like, what does it feel like to be Eddie Vedder? Like you're the last dude. There's nobody else left. Lanigan's gone. Lane Stanley's gone. Cornell's gone. Everybody's gone. Kurt's gone. Everybody's gone. It's just you.
Mhm.
Like that's got to be real. Like that's got to weigh heavy on your head.
Yeah, I imagine, like, he's the guy in 300 with the eye patch who looks back on his fallen friends.
Yeah,
Yeah, like, to just come back and, like, tell tale of, like, Seattle in '92. Like, to your point, like, Seattle in '92, LA in the early
yeah,
'80s, fucking, New York in the '60s during, like,
yeah,
the Gaslight, Cafe days, like, all
yeah,
these, like, legendary eras of stuff, and it's crazy to think back on, like, those were just that group of people doing their thing. So you were,
yeah,
like, looking to that as, like, okay, this is how you, like this is how you grow into yourself now as an artist, and you write for your life is now and how you're feeling now.
yeah. Because I'd always sort of been in competition. You always sort of like if you have anything that's successful, you sort of get in competition with yourself, which is a tough thing. But when you can let that go and like really let it go, like I am no longer trying to write the 59 sound too. But for a while, I wouldn't say I wasn't. I was trying to do
Sure.
something as maybe not the 59 South 2, but something as good. And it was definitely being in competition with myself. And I felt like if I didn't write something that hit people as hard as that, I would be failing, which is it's not true. That's a press thing. Like they try to, well, it's not as good as a fucking act I feel like, well, like
It's
the
like, okay, well, I feel like whenever press says that, it's like, okay, I feel like what they're really saying is, this does make me feel like I felt like when I was 16 that I didn't have any responsibilities.
right, like my
That's really
friend
what that says.
my friend is a writer, Jill, and she always tweets this thing like, "Is that record awesome, or were you just 16?" And it's like, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that's how I feel about Weezer, because I am such a fucking blue album Pinkerton, green album hipster for Weezer.
Yeah,
And it's not like I don't wanna, like, make anyone else feel shitty for liking the White Album or the Black Album, or it's just like that is one of those bands that's very much of that era. But
yeah,
to that point, dude, like, I think still making incredible songs. Like when I first heard, I've Positive Charge is like heavy rotation in my day because like
Yeah, man, I like that song a lot. Like
yeah,
I think it's as good as anything else I've ever done, which is cool.
yeah, I was like singing that song with my full chest in the back at the Paramount in Long Island. Uh,
Yeah, it's
I
a
I
great
love
song.
I love that song, dude. Like those like just the idea of like that line when I was so much stronger. I'm like, oh shit, because like
Yeah,
I felt that in my
me
creaking
too.
knees and
I know.
like fucking everything, man.
I'm with you, man. That's how I feel too. I mean, it's a good. It's just that was one of those tunes where I was like, I can still do it.
Dude, you absolutely can. I can't wait for this new record. I want to be respectful of your time because I don't want to hold you up from your life. But one, if I could ask you like a a couple more things. The one thing I want to ask you off air because a little guitar nerdery, but
Yeah,
you've got a so the other single that's coming out from the new record
yeah.
is with Bruce Springsteen. Bruce
Big
Springsteen
Bruce.
sings on a song. So I imagine that was like a if you could go back and tell your 16-year-old self-delivering or your young self-delivering tires, "Hey, you're going to do a song with the boss one day."
Yeah.
That so I want to ask you, what is it like working with Bruce Springsteen like in a musical context? Like what was it like working with him on that song on History Book?
Well, I mean, it was kind of we did it. We sent it to him really. Like it just went over. He asked us first. He's like, hey, would you be willing to write a duet for us to sing? And I was like, yeah, of course, sure. Um, because like I don't ask him for things because it just feels weird to ask him. I feel like everybody's asking him for something all the time. So he asked me and said, could you write us a duet? I was like, sure. But we did it, like we sent it to him and he was on tour and he just like recorded it in Ireland and in Dublin and was like, hey, like I recorded my verse and I just like sang it like how I thought it, and I was like, here, I sent it to him like with my voice and then he just took it out and sang his thing and I was like, okay, cool, like that sounds great. And then that's just kind of how it works. Like nowadays, if he was home, I probably would have went to the house and then like we would have
Uh-huh.
recorded together. But being like the modern world, you gotta send these things through, and he just sent it back, and it was like, all right, that's it. Like,
Uh-huh, and you're just like, "Oh, holy shit, Bruce Springsteen just sang on
yeah,
this
it's
song."
it's pretty surreal though to feel like what that feels like when you're singing your own song, and then you're like you hear Bruce's voice pop in there, and you're like, okay, that's different.
Yeah, that's gotta be kinda, like, otherworldly, I would
It
imagine.
it is. It sure is.
Yeah, and you've shared, like, the stage with him, right?
Yeah, a couple times. Yeah.
I would love to ask you this. Are you if in that moment, like, when he walks on stage, are you ever like do you ever like, "That's fucking Bruce Springsteen," and then like, "Oh, okay, the
No.
chorus is coming up?"
No. You just gotta kind of ignore that it's Bruce Springsteen and just be like, this is just like my friend who's gonna play with us right now. Because if you start getting into all those things, you'll lose it. You can't. I don't think you could. Your head can't comprehend what's happening. Like you just have to do it. It's like,
Yeah, totally, you gotta punch in for
yeah,
work sometimes. Gotcha.
absolutely. It's not like a. It's not if you think too much, done.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the kinda thing you think back on, and be like, "Holy shit, I did that." That's
Yeah,
that's that's rad that's rad, man. So
yeah, it's
the
pretty cool.
so the new Gaslight album comes out, when's the release date?
October 27th.
October 27th, and, I also I listened to this single you did with Cat Power, before we got on here. I think that's what they're called. That was really cool. Is that your first time ever doing a ska song?
Oh, Cat Bite.
Oh, Cat
Cat
Bite, I'm
bite,
sorry.
yeah, cat
I'm
bite. No,
sorry.
no, no, it's
Sorry,
okay.
Cat Bite.
Um, yeah, like that. We did a Slackers cover, and yeah, I guess that's my first time like publicly singing on a ska song. But yeah, I mean, I was a fan of the Slackers since I've been a kid. A lot of years spent with that band.
Very dude, that's so cool. And then, are you guys hitting the road again, once the album's out?
Yeah, and we leave for a tour on the 13th of this month, and
Mhm.
then 12th or 13th, and then the record will come out at the end of that tour, and then we'll go on tour again next year.
Awesome. Um,
Yeah.
well, man, this has been like a dream come true for me to chat with you, Brian.
Awesome.
I don't know if Selena mentioned this to you, but when I started doing this podcast, I wrote on a post-it note some of my dream guests, and one of the names I wrote was Brian Fallon.
There you go. She did not tell me that, which is good. But
So,
she played it cool. She's like, "This is my friend. Will you do the podcast?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it. It's fine.
yeah,
I go for you, anything."
I hope this has been enjoyable for you. I really
Yeah, it's been
appreciate it.
fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and this has been a really great conversation. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, I've had a good time. Thank you very much. It's good to be on it. Nice to meet you.
I don't know if you could tell listening to that, but I was literally floating about a foot off the ground for the entirety of this conversation. And just to give you a little bit of insider insight, after we finished recording, I had asked Brian how he plays the Gaslight Anthem song "Break Your Heart" because my wife and I really love that song. That song's really special to us, and he took the time and he showed me exactly how he plays it and like the secret to how he plays it. And I was particularly touched that he took the time to do that after we finished recording. It is a joy and a thrill to have been able to talk to Brian Fallon. So I want to thank Brian for his time and for his the great conversation, the great stories. The Gaslight Anthem's new album, History Books, comes out on October 27th. Check the links in the description for tour dates and links to Brian's solo work as well. And I also need to give a huge shout out to Selena, my friend Selena, from the podcast Tuick Minimum. Get it wherever you get your podcasts. She was instrumental in making this episode happen, and I am especially thankful and in a debt of gratitude to Selena as well. If you enjoyed this podcast and think you know a friend who would be into it as well, you can send them to awesomedisaster.com. That has links to everywhere you can get the podcast. We are on Apple, we are on Spotify. If you want to leave us if you want to subscribe or share a link to this episode, that helps us please the almighty algorithm. I am on Twitter at Comic Will Carry and on at Comic Will Carry on TikTok. And you can find me on Instagram at Will Carry 23 as well. Also, links to everything related to the Gaslight Anthem and Brian Fallon in the description as well. If you want to go a little bit further in support of the show, I do have a merch store as well as a Patreon. You can find links to those at awesomedisaster.com as well. And continue to be excellent. And I will let you know how my time in New Orleans was. And I will see you next time between Awesome and Disaster. Stay safe, get vaxxed and boosted, and stomp out fascism. Take care, everybody.